Welcome to the Dragon's Den. I'm your venerable host Orochi, and today we are going to be talking about the other Scaleshifter. Book 6 in the Scaleshifter series by Shelby Hailstone Law. And since this is book 6, if you haven't read the other ones, then why are you here? Perhaps go back and read them, or at least check out my other reviews for them, especially the first book, if you're looking to get into it. For all of those who are here because you have read all the rest of them, and especially after my last review, the short and sweet of this one is go fucking read it. Go out and just get right in there and read it. It was great. I read it, started last night basically, and finished it this morning. Almost. I read a little bit the day before, but yeah, it was good. Most of my reservations were unfounded, and it turned out much better than it could have. I was expecting to be slightly disappointed, but I was not at all, and that's fantastic. So yeah, go and read it. And the rest, of course, is going to be the spoiler section. Getting straight into it, the things that I was concerned about in the last book was about the kind of direction things could take, since they wanted to progress she wants to progress the story into, at least, because the next book is going to be the Scaleshifter's daughter, so it's going to be about their kid. And so, of course, things had to wrap up in a certain way, but they didn't have to wrap up well, is the kind of hanging point there, as things could have turned out badly considering how many things were set up. And I guess you could say that it might be a little underwhelming in this book that they sort of introduced the new antagonists in the last book, and then in this book they kill them both, and so they wrap everything up fairly quickly. I mean, it's still like a book and a half worth of dealing with this issue, and it kind of sets the backdrop of, by the end of this book, they kind of realize that this thing is just one issue, and all the other shit they've dealt with are just singular issues, and that's going to be the backdrop of their whole life, is issues large or small like this that they're going to have to deal with. And that's kind of their whole position as part of the council, is that they got to deal with this kind of stuff. And it's going to be a bumpy road trying to get everything to go towards peace. And so I think it definitely turned out a lot better than it could have in a lot of ways. It was the whole thing about Zia being human, and it does irritate me some that their whole actually getting together was more of Neva and Caleb getting together and less Zia and Kal getting together, because they kind of were already together. But it's not presented as, oh, she only wants to be human. There was a point in the book where she kind of realizes that she does, in fact, has come to love her dragon form. And so while she does prefer being human in most ways, she's not against being a dragon like she used to be, which I think is a huge step forward, because given her history and how much she was against having this form forced on her, not being able to change was kind of a big aspect for her. And it's like, yeah, of course, if she could be human all the time and stay with her mom, that's what she would do. And it's sort of left slightly ambiguous by the end how much she can stay in human form, but it's also given a sort of, oh, well, she's new to this, so she hasn't, figured out any decent way to really shift back and forth reliably for extended periods of time. So she is prone to reverting back to dragon form, and she doesn't hate that. So I think that was a really good point for me. I liked that quite a bit. And the majority of the book is the big standoff fight. Like a large chunk of this book was them setting up and having the big fight and how that turned out. I don't think it really emphasized how much of a Pyrrhic victory it should have been, considering that when it started, they were sure to lose. So then even with all the things that happened to make it so that they do win the fight, it wasn't quite... They touch on it somewhat, but I don't think they touched on it enough how much of a Pyrrhic victory it would be, and that even after the battle, with even more people leaving and stuff, that they're, the number of Northerners and dragons have dwindled significantly, and that I don't think that was touched on quite as much as I would have liked to really make it stand out that this was a huge loss. Like, when a charismatic person loses faith in the things that they're doing and loses purpose, then it can have a big problem with them trying to just usurp power and make everything conform to what they want to make their lives easier, because that generally makes life for most people worse. And so having that happen and having, their society fracture like that, it was talked about, but I don't think it really, in the end, it didn't get brought up enough about how damaged their society really was by all of that. Because you have a little bit of, unreliable narrator situation, because that both Zia and Kal are both going to be like, oh, this was all my fault, I could have done better, things are so terrible. You're always going to get that sort of thing from the both of them, so it's hard to really emphasize on how bad things actually were, because through their eyes everything is always going to be worse than it actually was. And so it almost felt like a sort of like a step back from that, in that they keep saying that things are bad, but they didn't really delve into it. It was more of a blame sort of thing, and not of a, just logistical, how bad are things, like top-down view kind of stuff, which I think was slightly unfortunate. But the big fight and all leading up to it was very well done. I think everything in this book was just turned out so great. There was a little bit of weirdness in introducing a new character and then having them have a fairly significant part in all of it, because when a new character just shows up out of nowhere, you always got to ask, why is this happening? What story beats is this trying to fulfill, or what is the purpose of it? And at times that can just be really rough to really fit into a story, and it was done fairly well in this, I think. I did ask those questions. It was a little jarring to just have a character added to the roster out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere. Just a dragon shows up out of the wild and is like, who the hell are you guys? What are you doing? Oh, can I go with you? And it's like, yeah, that was a little weird. Not only is it weird in the, you should be suspicious of this character a little bit, but also in a narrative sense, what is going on with the story that this is being added into the mix? But it turned out pretty good. And the new character also added some dynamics that the story really didn't get into, but it definitely could. Like, since the next book is going to be about their kid, it's probably going to do a time jump, which I'm going to hate. Like, straight up, if their kid is the protagonist of the next story, that's going to be terrible. Well, I mean, not terrible, but it's definitely going to be irritating for me, because I would love, like, the start of the last book had just the two of them in a cave decompressing and spending time with each other. I'm like, I loved that so much. I would like to see some of that in their human forms as well, but also how they navigate, mixing both their human lives and their dragon lives and their overall lives together. I would just like to see several chapters of just that, them living their lives, doing their thing. Because I'm like, because I love the idea of, slice of life kind of stuff, but with a twist. And it's like, this is the perfect example of, okay, well, what is the slice of life of Khal and Zia's life? It's like, well, they have to deal with the Leviathans, they have to deal with the Council, they have to deal with all these dragons that don't trust them, they have to deal with all these dragons that are trying to take over the former human lands and all this stuff. And then you swap over to, okay, well, what is a slice of Caleb and Neva's life? It's like, well, they have to deal with trying to get the humans to work with the dragons like the way the Mountaineers do, and maybe take in even more refugees, some of them Mountainers, some otherwise, and trying to not just make it so that Yatona is a thriving little town, city, but also expand, because, like, there's both of the kingdoms have been completely destroyed, so it's so much land that people could, repopulate on and retake over. And it is also part of Khal and Zia's job to, reformulate that. It was an amazingly interesting thing to have them both meet the original god that chose Khal as the champion. That was crazy, and they worked it into the story. It's worked into the story in such a way that it's believable and not, like, heavy-handed or anything. And so that was really nice. And it sort of leaves this sort of thing as like, well, they know where the god resides. Like, the god has a singular place that is a tether to their, otherworldly presence, because they literally say that it's like, oh, this is one of my favorite worlds that we created. And so it gives the impression that, everything you're doing is important, and there are gods that are literally looking after you and hoping you do well, but they also have, a billion and one other things on their plates that they're doing, but they are kind of rooting for you. Which is super interesting. The idea that they could actually go back to this place and have a chance. Maybe not always be successful, but actually to have a chance to communicate with one of the gods. That opens a lot of story aspects that could be very interesting. Especially if their daughter ends up being like, the chosen of the gods. Like, this is why they were kind of getting together in the first place. Would be really interesting. And I gotta say that after all of the lead up and the big battle and everything, that the end, the trip home, and then them decompressing a little bit with their family, and just the part of Caleb talking to Niva's mom, and she was just like, you better take care of my girl. He's like, yeah, I will. And, well, I kind of want to ask her. And she's just like, of course you want to. Everybody has known this for years. And it's like, yes, like everybody's been pushing them together. So it's like, of course. But then she goes, and on top of that, yes, of course, I give you my blessing. And then he's just like, good, because I got to do this. If I don't do this now, I could miss the chance, and we might never have a moment of peace for the rest of our lives, and then we'll regret this for the rest of my life if I don't get this out of me right now, to just at least let her know that I will be with her for the rest of her life, whether it's us being a couple or just being there to make sure that she's safe. I want my life to be part of hers. And he's such a fucking nerd, and I absolutely adored the whole lead up to it. And I just, oh my god, when he just starts blurting it out, and then he's like, wait, no, I can do better, hold on. I just started crying. It was so fucking beautiful because he just blurts it out and then takes a step back to be like, wait, no, you deserve better. Like, let me try to articulate my feelings here. And then actually had a fucking beautiful moment together. And it was so good. And it's like, yeah, that's the perfect ending, basically, because bad shit could have happened and it could have ended in some other ways, but it ended the most perfect way that it could, and I'm rather happy for that, because I have read too many stories that have tried for whatever reason to just avoid the, happiest, best ending to be more gritty and realistic and stuff. And it's like, and most of them it just doesn't feel good in any way, shape, and or form. And it just makes the whole story suck. So it's like, yeah, if you have written your characters well enough so that they have earned their happy ending, then give them their fucking happy ending. Oh, it was so fucking fantastic. I definitely go and read this one, and I hope that the next one starts off like the last one, and we get just time of them decompressing, and then maybe like the middle of the story can be like them raising their kid together, and how that turns out, and how start setting the building blocks to how that's going to change the world, and what it means for them, for their daughter to have the parentage that she does. Because is she going to be human? Is she going to be a dragon? Is she going to be able to freely shift from birth? Like, those are some very potent questions, because even the wild dragons in the north, they're still kind of like figuring out, what do we do with all of this? And it's shown that a lot of the hatchlings from the wild dragons can end up intelligent. And so they kind of need to be saved from just the animalistic lifestyles that they have, because they can do more. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that could be done with the next book. I just hope that it's not some massive time skip, and that instead it acts as if it's a whole new story, and starts building blocks to have another big story arc. That's my hope anyway. If anybody else has any feelings, feel free to put them down in the comments. I love talking about this stuff. Great books are so inspiring. But that is all for now. Have a great evening.